You're a navigator? At Gattaca?
That's what it says, doesn't it?
It doesn't say you're crippled.
I'm not crippled. I hurt my leg training, you moron. How dare you question me?
You're right.
What's your number?
All right, forget it.
No, what's your number, you fucking flatfoot?
Look, I said forget it. What do you want, an apology?
Oh, it gets to you, doesn't it? It gets to you that I can do what you can only dream of. I'm getting off this ball of dirt. How dare you question me? That's harassment.
My mistake.
What's your number? What's your number?
Hey, remember that eugenics movie you had to watch in biology class? Gattaca, a 1997 American science fiction film directed by Andrew Niccol, starring Ethan Hawke, Uma Thurman, Alan Arkin, Jude Law, Lauren Dean, Ernest Borgnine, and many more. Let's take a quick look.
Genetics. What can it mean? The ability to perfect the physical and mental characteristics of every unborn child. Of genetic engineering.
To choose the genes. In the cells of society.
In the not-too-distant future, our DNA will determine everything about us. A minute drop of blood, saliva, or a single hair determines where you can work, who you should marry, what you're capable of achieving. In a society where success is determined by science, divided by the standards of perfection, one man's only chance
How do you expect to pull this off? I don't know exactly.
is to hide his own identity
This is the last day that you're gonna be you and I'm gonna be me.
by borrowing someone else's.
Congratulations. What about the interview? That was it.
Do you think you'd be doing what you're doing if it wasn't for who you are, what you are?
I have a feeling he might be there under false pretenses, playing somebody else's hand.
They've got my picture plastered up all over the place. They'll recognize me.
They won't recognize.
They'll recognize me.
I don't recognize you. They won't believe that one of their elite could have suckered them all this time.
They are going to find me.
But in a place where any cell from any part of your body can betray you, how do you hide? When we all shed 500 million cells a day. Ethan Hawke, Uma Thurman. Welcome to Gattaca.
So welcome back to the Cult of Films. I am flying solo today to talk about one movie that is such a head-scratcher that it just was not more of a well-liked film, and that is 1997's Gattaca. And this is not only a great film that was just bombing at the box office. We're talking about a $36 million budget, and it only made 12.5, so it was a financial failure, but turned into quite a cult following, and in my opinion, it should have been more of a mainstream success, but more on this later. This is Andrew Niccol's first feature film. This is his first film. This movie is so clean, so polished. No, it's not perfect, but as far as a first effort goes, New Zealand's Andrew Niccol, who would go on to direct movies like Simone, Lord of War, The Host, not the greatest list of films, but Gattaca was definitely a very competent and, dare I say, great film, especially for a first effort. First off, what is Gattaca? Well, Gattaca, in a quite literal sense, is the 4 nucleobases of DNA, but as far as a film goes, it is set in the near future, kind of a dystopian future. Everything is very sterile, and science has basically perfected libertarian eugenics. We're not only a select few that could afford it, but the norm now is breeding your children in petri dishes via in vitro, filtering out any possibility of any ailments such as heart disease or ADHD, picking and choosing exactly kind of attributes your child is born with. It's like rolling a natty 20 on your D&D character And now you have the opportunity to do that in this world. It's also centered around a space station called Gattaca, where only the best of these what they call valids, these people with the genetic manipulations, are selected to have the best jobs and careers available to mankind, and everyone else that is a natural birth, also affectionately known as a non-valid, are just there to kind of service the cream of the crop, where those people, like at very best, you could become like a cop, or likely than not, you're just cleaning the floors as a janitor for these quote-unquote perfectly bred people. This is now transcended racism and sexism. Now we're just like pure genetic perfection is not only with these companies, but society itself has now kind of coined the norm. Genetic discrimination is illegal in the movie. Companies, like during a job interview, will do anything possible to collect a skin cell from a handshake or wipe a swab sample off the doorknob that you use to kind of filter in what is a safe bet. Because as our protagonist states in the very lengthy voiceover at the beginning of the film, why would these companies go all in financially on someone that is kind of up in the air? Because even deter natural births, when every child is born in like a hospital naturally, they go through a laundry list of statistics. There's like a 50% chance that your child is going to have ADD, or a 99% chance that they're going to have some kind of heart failure or heart problems. Tell the parents of the main character when he's born that he probably won't live past the age of 32, basically to kind of scare people into funneling in everyone that's looking to start a family, doing it this, now what it's called, the natural way. Let's just talk about the world in the context of this movie. Everything is very sterile, very stringent, super clean, a lot of, shiny surfaces, and it kind of matches the demeanor of the people that live in it. There's no flaws within the structures or the buildings, as well as the people that are engineered. Even though it's a future movie, it feels like a kind of a noir setting as well. All the cars look like they're from like the 1940s and 1950s. There's like a lot of roadster and spider looking cars, but everything is like plugged in, like they're all electric. They have all these little nuanced things that show you, yes, we've kind of gone back in time, but it also shows you that little bit of advance in technology. And this film is in 1997, so electric cars were probably kind of big think back then, but nowadays, everyone's got like a Nissan Leaf. Also, there's a lot of interesting choices as far as the lighting goes in this film. Everything inside is kind of shot with natural light. There is some instances in some rooms or chambers that it's very intense, like blues and oranges, but for the most part, it's kind of a funny juxtaposition, because when you're indoors, there's a lot of natural lighting, which looks like it would be coming from the outside. Everything that's shot in the outside in this movie is all drenched in like the sepia color filter, so everything looks very flat and monochrome when you're outside, until people go back on the inside, which was a very interesting choice by Andrew Niccol. So let's talk about the characters and kind of the plot of the film. And our main character is Ethan Hawke, who plays Vincent Anton Freeman. He has quite a array of names during the film. He is born to Marie and Antonio Freeman, played by Jane Brooke and Elias Koteas. That's right, Casey Jones makes an appearance in this film. He is a natural birth, so the doctors are already decreeing that he's going to have all these underlying problems. He probably will not live past his early to mid 30s. And so the Freemans turn to the natural way for their second child and choose a brother for Vincent, and that's Anton Freeman, who is a prototypical kind of perfect son. He's already outgrowing Vincent at a rapid pace. Vincent's wearing eyeglasses. He's always out of breath, which of course causes friction between the two brothers. Use kind of a measuring stick. They have a version of the game Chicken where they both swim out into the ocean from the shore as far as possible until one brother kind of gives up. And that brother is always Vincent. Very early on, it kind of shows you that maybe that all this perfection breeding is kind of bullshit. Anton kind of taps out before Vincent, and that really sets in motion kind of the trajectory of both of these characters' arcs. Vincent becomes obsessed with space travel, where he gets a job at Gattaca, which is this space station, which is constantly sending out like rockets to different areas of the solar system. But he starts as a janitor because of his lack of purity. He's just there to be servile, even if he is more technically qualified than most of the other workers there. So not being content with his biological station in life, he meets up with German, played by Tony Shalhoub, who is this kind of black market person that contacts other valids that have fallen on hard times, and this one in particular had an accident and is now in a wheelchair. Jerome Eugene Morrow, played by Jude Law. This character was an athlete, very successful, always ranking top of the class, but he also had kind of the same type moment that the two Freeman brothers experienced, where he even says to Vincent, all this perfection and I was bred to be the best, as the silver medal. So he even knows that even with being perfect as a birthright, he still can only amount to second best. So then Vincent starts taking on the task of becoming Jerome. Every day he has to exfoliate any loose skin particles. He has to cut his hair perfectly. He even has to like extend his legs in some kind of disgusting like leg breaking scene that thankfully happens off camera to get the same exact height that Jerome is. He just kind of comes up through the ranks of Gattaca until he is chosen to be a part of one of the launches. So there's a lot of great tension. The company is constantly checking to make sure that their personnel is not tainted by non-valids, where every day they have to, you know, instead of like clocking in, they have to get a finger prick to check everyone's blood type based on one of Jerome's fingerprints with like a little pocket of blood in there, which is kind of gross. So it could take samples. He always has Jerome's like urine strapped to his leg or a vial of blood on him in case they have to do any kind of DNA screening or pop-up randoms. It's not even like random drug tests, it's just like random tests to see if you are who you are. Dr. Lamar, played by Walking Dead's Xander Berkeley, he has some great parts and winds up being very important in the film, just to add tension on top of the everyday, making sure that you're vacuuming your keyboard, all your skin cells that you might have dropped just from typing in your keyboard, and then dropping someone else's skin cells from a vial, just to make sure that you don't even leave any sense of yourself. There's also a murder that happens to the director of the department. He's not very well liked. He's trying to shut down a lot of these launch programs, so someone kind of wipes him out. It's the worst thing that you want to happen to you if you're trying to kind of lay low, even to, you know, this extreme extent that Vincent has to do constantly. But to now have a murder investigation where they are fine-tooth combing absolutely everything and everyone to find out who murdered the director of this department. Uma Thurman plays Irene Cassini. She is a non-valid, but she has kind of risen above her station. She'll never be able to launch to space either because of how she was born. She takes medication for her heart. She does maintain kind of a higher station than most people of her genetic upbringing. It turns into a romance. That's all kind of normal, you know, movie, Hollywood, cookie cutter stuff. But once the story gets going, after like the long montage flashback of Vincent growing up and explaining the world through copious amounts of voiceover and exposition, it all takes place in the span of like a week between kind of when the murder happens and then at the end of the week is when Vincent is supposed to shoot off in the rocket. It's kind of a pressure cooker of not only maintaining his identity, but also trying to avoid being pinned with this murder. They sweep the body of the director. They find a lot of particles of people. Just think about that, like all the particles of the people that you interact with or even don't interact with. Like if you're just like in a public space and someone happens to cough on you, like they pull like hundreds of different types of DNA, whether that be like saliva or skin particles, or, you know, they find an eyelash from Vincent. So they go ahead and they put up, you know, Vincent Freeman's non-valid picture on everything. And even though he's kind of standing right there in the bullpen with the rest of them, he starts getting really nervous. Even the real Jerome says to Vincent that even though you're kind of hiding in plain sight, they're never going to peg it on you because they don't want to believe that one of these, you know, one of the elite is responsible for such a heinous murder. So I will say spoilers at this point because I am going to talk about the end of the film. This film has been out since 1997. I hope that you have seen it, and if you haven't, like, go ahead and stop this review now and go check out Gattaca. It's definitely worth your time. But I'm just going to do a quick spoiler warning one more time because we are going to talk about the end of this film. It turns out that Detective Hugo's partner, played by Alan Arkin, is actually Anton Freeman, who's played by Lauren Dean, who is the brother of Vincent. Find out who the killer is. It turns out to just be like one of the other like managers of the launch program. he just basically killed his boss because he wanted to make, he's kind of an older guy and he wanted to make sure that he got to see the true passion project launch that he was working on happen before this director guy could kind of shut it down. So he took matters in his own hands. But even though that the murder is solved, the detective that winds up being Anton, the brother, he kind of goes off the rails and uses this as a way to track down his estranged brother, Vincent, and confront him. By birthright, he should be the one in this high stature, this fantastic job, but you could tell that while that one race as a child really fueled and pushed Vincent to kind of break the system, it really stunted the growth of Anton, putting in that doubt, like, you were not bred for perfection like I was, but you still beat me. So they have a confrontation. And this is probably my biggest problem in the movie, where they wind up just having one of those races, but at night wind up swimming out, into the misty ocean. Once again, Anton's just like, Vincent, how are you doing this? You're not supposed to, how are you doing everything? You're not supposed to be better than I am. And at that point, Vincent says, well, I didn't leave anything this time for the swim back, because it was basically a suicide mission for both brothers. Anton was going to expose Vincent, and Vincent knew that, so they just decided to kind of go all in and prove once and for all that this whole like libertarian eugenics thing was all bullshit, and that you get to kind of dictate who you are. It's not just destiny. And just because you're born in a petri dish doesn't mean that you're predetermined to be better than everyone else. That isn't. Instead of having this kind of like big emotional impact, Anton, like I said, kind of taps out. Vincent saves him, and then it just kind of fades to black for that scene. So you never see Anton again. You assume that he doesn't die, but then you see Vincent like waiting for Uma Thurman, just kind of chilling out. So obviously he had enough in the tank to not only beat his genetically superior brother, but also save him and swim him back to shore. That was kind of a head scratcher. But the real culmination of the film is very effective. Throughout the runtime, it is a very awkward relationship between Vincent and Jerome. It's a person that is trying to become another person that's in the room, but Jude Law is also kind of pissed off and upset with how his own life turned out. You can tell there's like a friendship and a camaraderie there, but there's also this weird tension between the two of them. Jude Law is just like a drunk. He's just squandering all the natural gifts that were given, where on the other side of the coin, Ethan Hawke is having to overcome and push past all the hurdles. So Jerome tells Vincent that he has kind of been working extra hard. He set enough of his own samples, like blood samples, urine samples, skin samples, aside for Vincent to impersonate Jerome for 2 lifetimes. Which is basically just like draining half of his blood away. Like, it's a lot. Like, even Vincent's like, Jesus, like that's way too much. But Jerome kind of tells Vincent in his goodbye he's going to go on a journey too, and he ultimately was more honored because all he had to do was lend Vincent his body, where Vincent lent Jerome his dream. So Vincent is taking off on his mission, gets stopped at one last checkpoint, an impromptu pee test right before you get on the space shuttle, and Xander Berkeley, Dr. Lamar once again, and Ethan Hawke's just kind of like throwing up his hands, just like, I just want you to tell everyone, I could have been great. I was better than everyone else, but just, let people know how far I got, even when I wasn't supposed to. And then Dr. Lamar reveals to him that he kind of knew Vincent was an impersonator the entire time. He gets rid of his dirty piss sample and kind of sends him on his way. And the closing scene is what's really emotionally effective. Once again, Vincent sitting in a rocket ship, kind of leaving the world that, no longer likes his kind, although he feels very attached to it now with his relationship with Uma Thurman. He's leaving in a suit, like a monorail to Titan, Saturn's moon. Like, who cares? They're not wearing like the space suit or whatever. I wonder if that was like a budgetary cut or just kind of a metaphorical choice. But he finally has this, culmination and this feeling of overcoming the odds. All the while, it's revealed that Jude Law, his character, actually tried to commit suicide before by jumping in front of a car, which is what crippled him. But now is, his journey is actually crawling into the furnace where they burn all the exfoliated skin samples for Vincent's day-to-day transformation into Jerome. Puts on his second place medal. He also leaves a world that he feels like he's not a part of. So even though that one person is kind of achieving the apex of their arc in the most positive way, Jerome is achieving a different kind of apex, which was just, you know, putting a cap on what he feels like a weird squandered opportunities of his life. This film was critically acclaimed, has an 82% on Rotten Tomatoes. The people that really liked it. Like Roger Ebert even stated, this is one of the smartest and most provocative of science fiction films, a thriller with ideas. Had to have been some kind of timing issue. You know, films in 1997 was like, the #1 film was Titanic. You had The Lost World, Jurassic Park, Men in Black, stuff like Liar Liar. Like, these were The Fifth Element. These were the type of films that people were showing up for. I guess they didn't have time for a slower paced, very, very smart science fiction thriller with fantastic performances, a great script, and shot really beautifully. I really give credit to my freshman year biology teacher, because they actually showed this movie. I mean, there is nudity, there is F words, there is violence, there's, you know, an autopsy scene where you see a guy's brain. It's also really smart. So, you know, whoever, I don't remember who it was, biology teacher in Las Vegas at Bonanza High School, but good job respecting your students. That's it for me. I'm glad I got to talk Gattaca with all of you. Again, it's a film that if you haven't seen it and you are a fan of the science fiction genre or dystopian future type genre, it's like a Cosmopolis from David Cronenberg, then definitely go check this movie out. It is way better than the numbers show. If you like the Cult of Films, please let me know in the comments. Hit the thumbs up button, do all the YouTube stuff, as well as checking out this episode in audio platforms as well, like iTunes, Spotify. Leave me ratings there. Tell everyone that this show exists. If you want to talk films with me on social media, you can do so at OrzovDunn on Twitter. So until next time, I got nothing valid because this is not a very quotable film. But thanks for watching.